Good point.
But what's the future for the SEC look like? A lot of talk about a 9-game schedule. What do we think it should look like? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. College football is probably moving to a 14 or 16 game college football playoff format. And much of the discussion and really the negotiations that are taking place are to get the SEC to match what the Big 12, the ACC, and the Big 10 are doing, and that's playing 9 conference games. Jay, first of all, do you favor an 8-game conference schedule or a 9-game conference schedule?
I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of more in favor of an 8-game instead of a 9 because I kind of prefer the multiple big-time games in the non-con. I know that Big 12 and the Big 10 and all of them still do non-con games that are pretty big, but with the SEC, they've got a lot of teams that have built-in rivalries that are Power 4 schools. Like we just talked about a minute ago, Florida has Florida State and Miami every single year. Georgia has Georgia Tech every single year. South Carolina has Clemson every single year. So the rivalry games there kind of help with some of the non-con. Now, not everybody deals with that, but I'm here for the 8-game and just keep it that way. And then continue to, if anything, I would require each team to have 2 P4 non-con games to go with, whatever, is left over. And then you can have 2, cupcakes just for the fans to be able to see what your team looks like. And I don't have a problem with cupcakes. You need them. College football doesn't have a preseason, and so you kind of need tune-up games in order to get going. The NFL has preseason games so they can get themselves and get their bodies ready, but I think college football still needs to have some sort of a tune-up set of games. So I'm here for, still having some non-con games that aren't that big of a deal. Where are you at with the 8 or 9 game conference schedule?
I kind of lean more to the 9, but you make a good point in if you require everybody to have 2 Power 4 games on the schedule, as opposed to right now where it's just 1 Power 4 game on the schedule, I think that makes it more intriguing, to be honest, because then you can have a Nebraska on your schedule more regularly, or you can get Oklahoma State back on your schedule more regularly.
Yeah.
And play a Michigan. But if you were to play Nebraska and Oklahoma State on a regular basis, would you want to go play a Michigan or an Ohio State or a USC, fingers crossed one day, or pick a Big 12 school? I think that does create a more intriguing element. At the same time, the 9-game, dude, that would also be very, very fun. It'd be very fascinating because how much fun, okay, we sucked, we were terrible, we lost 6 SEC games this year. It was not fun. But from an entertainment standpoint, it was kind of fun.
Yeah, there was still entertainment value there. Well, I think for us as Sooner fans, just the different matchups at different stadiums, because it's the best part about playing in the SEC and the Big 10 is the massive stadiums you get to go travel to. There's a lot more, and most of the bigger ones are between those 2 conferences, so it's a lot more fun in that capacity. So totally get you on that one. I think the thing that gets me is, so here's the question. I shot this, me and you had talked about this a little bit, last night when the SEC Mike and that SEC podcast were putting out their permanent SEC opponents if they go to a 9-gamer. Was really thinking about it, and man, I'm gonna be honest, if the goal is to get 4 automatic bids, why not go to the quad system? 4 divisions, 4 teams each. The winner of those, of each quad, is the one that's most likely, you have to play your entire quad and then one from each other, 1 or 2, or depending on how you want to set it up, but make it to where that the winner of the quad ends up in the playoff setup to go into the SEC championship game, and then boom, those top 4 teams still make it into the playoffs. That to me feels like it makes more sense. That's how you can figure out your seeding, where you have to play your games. I like the quad. I don't like the 3 permanents because it takes away certain things. Like, for example, this year, Alabama didn't play Mississippi State for the first time in like 105 or 10 years. It was the longest running matchup in college football that got eliminated because of realignment. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's Mississippi State. They shouldn't have played them. Well, there's kind of a rivalry there. It's not like it's a real one. It's like Oklahoma State. But they played each other every year for over 105 years, and I hate that we lost that because of realignment. I want to be able to preserve some of that kind of stuff too.
Yes. And you look at Oklahoma and what they've got in front of them in the SP Plus ratings that we just talked about. And if you're talking 8-game schedule, well, 7 of those teams that Oklahoma's going to play this year are on their schedule that are ahead of them. So if we're talking strength of schedule, it's looking pretty all right. You look at the Big Ten, they've got a team ranked in the hundreds in Purdue. The ACC and the Big 12, they've got teams ranked 76 or lower. The SEC doesn't have that in SP Plus ratings. And so I get the strength of schedule argument. I get the schedule equity argument where you want to have everybody kind of play on the same playing field. At the same time, I mean, the SEC, even though they haven't been to the national title game in the last couple of years, even though they're playing 8, or at least with Oklahoma playing 8 conference games, they're playing as tough a schedule as anybody in the country.
Yeah, they've got 2.
And so I'm okay with that. Like, if that's going to be your 8 games, and then you have Michigan on top of it, I'm okay with that. But
I 100% agree.
And then as far as the quad argument goes, Jay, I don't want to see a Seattle Seahawks 7-9 team make the playoff. And if you're telling me that the winner of each quad is going to get a potential playoff spot over a team that maybe has a better record, I don't know how I feel about that one. That's and this is where the automatic bid situation loses me a little bit. If you're going to tell me that you're guaranteeing 4 Big Ten, 4 SEC schools, what happens in a year where you've got like a bunch of 8-4 teams and none of them really deserve to be in?
Yeah, that's where things get really sticky here. And that's where the money comes in, because we've got to make sure that the suits are taken care of. They need a little bit more in their pocket to pay, those yacht bills or whatnot. So, no, I totally agree with you there. That is the toughest part about the quad setup is there's that potential for a team with we'll say probably 9-3 more so is most likely with college football, but it's still not going to be, you may get an 8-4, hey, you might see a 7-5. That could be it. But it'll be, to me, it's maybe not the winner of each quad gets it. Maybe you may make it to where not even the highest seeded one can even get into the playoffs. It's going to be based, I guess for me, what I'm looking at is how do you set it up to where you can just make a mini playoffs that leads into the SEC championship game that then leads into the actual playoffs, which honestly, what you could do is just do a mini playoffs for each conference that leads into their conference champion, and then just the conference champions are the only ones that's left in the playoffs. That may be more optimal. Like, instead of seeing the same SEC teams over and over, you just see them early and then work your way down the line.
Yeah, that's something I thought about a little bit too. At the same time, if you do that, how do you include Notre Dame if they're worthy of being in the playoff? How do you potentially include a group of 5 team? It kind of busts your bracket up a little bit.
Do 6. Just do it down to 6. And then, Notre Dame plays as one of them if they have a good enough record. Or you make them play in the ACC's playoffs based upon their record.
They're not going to the ACC.
No, they don't have to play in the ACC, but they got to play in the ACC's tournament.
Yeah. No. They're a Big Ten team.
They play ACC basketball.
That's stupid. They need to be a Big Ten team.
I mean, it's fair point. Fair point. They're in Big Ten country, but at the same time, we've got Stanford, Cal playing in the ACC.
Also stupid. So they need to go back to the
and SMU. Yeah. Actually, all of it's stupid.
And
so I
SMU
agree.
needs to go to the Big 12. Yeah, that's them too. Yes, SMU makes a little bit more sense because you're not half a world away. Like, you're not 3 time zones away if you're Stanford and Cal. You're just 1 time zone away from the ACC going from Eastern to Central. That makes a little bit more sense, similar to Oklahoma and Texas being in the SEC. At the same time, SMU's got to fly over a lot of SEC teams to get to an ACC school on the coast, or they got to fly west. It's odd, man. The current conference alignment setup is weird. But anyway, we didn't even really touch on this, and maybe we need to do this just real quick, or we need to save it for another day. SEC Mike recommended Arkansas and Missouri, in addition to Texas, as Oklahoma's 3 permanent opponents. How do you feel about that?
I don't like it at all. Because also in their recommendation, Arkansas is not even playing Texas A&M, and they have a rivalry game where they play in Dallas every year. Like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we getting rid of the standard traditions here? So, to me, if you do that, you probably, based upon the way they have it, let me pull that up really quickly, which that will be another fun conversation, as you mentioned. I totally agree there, that you got to find a way to get Texas A&M to play against Arkansas. If you do Texas A&M, Arkansas, that means Louisiana needs to be pulled out. You could probably throw Oklahoma and LSU together. I like that. You probably should shift Alabama to where they get, Mississippi State, which to me makes the most sense. So I'd probably take LSU off Alabama, send them to Mississippi State. So in that case, Oklahoma may pick up like Kentucky.
Gross.
Ole Miss.
Gross.
I know, right? Disgusting, right? He's just ill. LSU's going to probably pick up somebody else. Maybe give LSU... Actually, you know what? You probably should just give LSU Ole Miss. Well, they got Ole Miss on that list. Give them Kentucky. Shoot. Just let me get some of the regional stuff back. Give me some of the rivalries we're supposed to have, and your best way of doing it. I don't like Oklahoma getting Missouri and Arkansas just because of proximity. I understand they want to make it regionalized in that capacity, but let's keep at least some of the rivalries going. So there's a lot of shuffling needs to be done here, but yeah, I don't like Arkansas or Missouri. I think Arkansas I would prefer Arkansas because it's next door, but it's probably going to have to be removed.
Well, and to me, LSU makes a lot more sense for Arkansas than OU does.
Yeah.
So like for Arkansas, it probably needs to be LSU, Texas A&M. For OU, you're looking at, Missouri. That makes a little bit of sense. You've got 90 plus games together. Texas is the obvious one. And then dude, just give me somebody that's like a power, or it's been a power at one point in time in their college football life span. Florida. Give me Alabama. That's not going to happen, but you can make it Alabama. Make it, not Texas A&M is not a power, but they're a former Big 12 team that you played against a bunch. Yeah, something like that. Or Vanderbilt. Just give me the easy dub with Vanderbilt. That's fine too. All right, we got to talk some NFL Combine stuff because a couple Sooners just blew it up, made themselves a little bit of money. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.